All right, everybody. Let's go ahead and start get those cameras on. It's time to work on some essays. All right, you guys know the deal. I can't look at all black screens, so somebody's gonna have to get those cameras on. There we go. Is it Yomira? There we go. Awesome. How are we doing today, Yomira?
Doing good. It's Yomira. I'm doing great. Yourself?
Yomira, awesome. I'm awesome. I'm doing all right. Ready to go over some essays. So, catch me up. Have you looked at some of the other stuff we've been doing so far? Is this your first Legally Fit session?
No, I was part of the MBE one as well.
Okay, perfect. So did you get a chance to do some MBEs after that? How was that? Yeah.
Yeah, we got to do some UWorld MBE questions and try to write sentences of the patterns you gave. So that was a really great technique.
Yeah. So are we noticing the difference? Are we starting to see those patterns and have some effectiveness? Because it could be a challenge, but are you effectively getting those patterns down?
Yeah, I'm trying to condense them as much as possible and trying to act like what the differences are and things in that.
Good, good. Glad to hear. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm super excited, everybody. Today we're going to do now essay work. I see a few people in here that are my first time takers too. So always love seeing that extra energy getting in here, trying to learn what you can. But again, this is going to be focused on my repeat takers. So seminar and the session is going to go. We're going to walk through a bit of the strategy that I want to share. And then we're going to jump into the remedies question from this past year's exam. Okay. I will give anybody a moment to prepare themselves if they would love to volunteer. At the end, I'd like to use, after we learn all the things we're going to learn, I'd like to use somebody's actual essay to kind of critique, right? After we learn some of the things that should go in our essay writing and how we want to do it, I think it'd be a great exercise to be able to take some work product and essentially do a grade in the class. So if anybody is brave enough to share, and again, this is a trust circle. We're all here to learn. So when I say brave enough, not in any way to intimidate, this is just an opportunity to figure out what can we do differently. All right, so let me go ahead and share screen and jump into the presentation. For those that are doing Legally Fit, this is going to be a little bit of what you do in the actual orientation, but not a complete replacement. So just do keep that in mind, but we will be using some of the same content. And it starts here with the components of essay success. All right, so the first thing we need to do is understand what goes into success on the essay portion of the exam. First off, 50% of it comes down to understanding of the law, just like with the multiple choice, right? Unlike the PT, which is a closed universe, you have to understand the law in order to be able to score well on these, right? That's just a matter of fact. But in addition to that, you have now core skills and intangible skills. Also, something that should look very similar to the multiple choice are those core skills. Core skills are almost universal amongst the bar, across the bar, right? Reading comprehension, issue spotting, organizing and outlining, rule memorization, thorough analysis, and conclusions. Now, let's talk about these intangible skills for just a hot second. Okay, so we won't go into detail on all of these right now for time's sake, but yeah, all of these intangible skills are very important, right? One of these could be the reason why we get a 55 or a 50 instead of a 70. All right, for example, let's go with one that's really important, and let's go with prioritizing the issues. Okay, prioritizing the issues. Let's go with the question here, and let's go with Anthony. Anthony, kind of think to it, right? This is the same thing. I know you're going to be doing this for your first time coming up soon, but what would be the importance of prioritizing the issues and why this single-handedly could be a reason why we receive a lower score if we don't prioritize?
Yeah, everything's not weighted the same, I would suppose. Everything's not created equal, or I'll say all the things on the exam are not going to be weighted the same, right? So
Yeah.
if issues come up in terms of, I don't know, if you use civil procedure, for instance, like um I don't know why I did that one. But I think like issue preclusion may be a little bit less than maybe subject matter jurisdiction or personal jurisdiction, for instance.
Yeah.
So I think that like, yeah, everything's not weighted equal.
That's exactly it, right? Everything is not weighted equally, right? And it's all in a given scenario, right? There could be one essay, Anthony, where personal jurisdiction's worth very little points, by chance, but then another essay where it's worth all the points. So it's a lot about the call of the question, the fact pattern itself, and where they've allocated the points. One of the things that I've noticed and seen, right, it's like it's the bar exam. Our nerves are high, our nerves are up, and a lot of times, if we don't have a strategy in place, we tend to overemphasize and overfocus on those first couple of issues, right? Because we're just so happy and ready and excited and nervous, etc. But we're not actually thinking through that. So yes, that could be a reason why we don't pass when, let's say, one of those prioritized issues is in the middle or in the end, but we didn't give it the right amount of time. All right, so there's a lot here. Again, we'll talk about these more in detail, all of these in orientation, but I really want to focus on getting to our essay for the day and learning some of the skills hands-on. So we'll come back to this if we have time. If not, for all those joining us, it will be discussed in orientation. Let's run through some of these most common issues really quickly. Number one, subpar understanding of the law, right? The first thing that this connects to is your ability to accurately issue spot. It's simple. If we're not spotting the right issues, then we cannot get the points. All right. Next, poor reading comprehension. If we don't understand what's going on, if we're missing facts, confusing facts, making up all these different things, again, hard to get the points. Next, number three, and this is the one that I probably hate to see the most. I hate to see leaving points on the table, right? Because that's the person in theory who spotted the right issues, had good reading comprehension, knows what's going on, right? But your discussion was just not flushed out enough. You were too conclusory, right? It's typically the critique there. So we got to get really good at squeezing out those points. And it's such a fine, game that you play with that, right? Because you have to have this internal compass for when it's like, all right, let me squeeze out these points. But also, when is it time to move on to the next lemon, right? And start squeezing that out. If you spend too much time on one lemon and there's no more juice left, well, now you're wasting time. So what's that fine line of, okay, let me sit with this long enough to get the points out versus I'm sitting with this now too long. I'm making too many arguments. And again, that could be a challenge. All right, next, we have to be able to organize our discussion, okay? I think we're gonna see that in today's Remedies essay. I think there were some options there on how you can organize it, and you wanna be intentional about your organization. Just like a lawyer, right? Our job is to be able to take situations, take legal principles, and deliver them to whether it's the judge, our client, our supervisor, whomever, in a clean, organized manner, right? When we have work product that's jumbled all over the place, I think that will count against us. Can't timely articulate their thoughts, right? So this goes to a little bit of your preparation and then also into time management. But if you find yourself in the middle of an essay and you're struggling through, how am I going to articulate this? That essentially tells me you haven't done enough practice to be prepared to make those arguments. Right? You want to be prepared for the commonly tested issues so you have these cataloged arguments in your back pocket. The same way we talked about doing multiple choice questions with the lens of making and catching patterns, right? So that way, when you see it again, you're prepared for it. With essays, you can also do patterns, right? Of these facts trigger these issues, but you can also do patterns or sequences of, okay, when I analyze this issue, these are the type of facts that I look for, or this is the type of argument I look to make. The more you catalog those, the quicker and more accurate you are in your actual essay writing on the day of the exam. And then lastly is time management. Okay, so we see this every single year. This will never go away with the bar exam, but hopefully it can no longer be an issue for any of us here, right? We have to put literally consistent effort into this. And it's just an ongoing practice to be able to finish these essays. And whether it's a 30 minutes, if you're taking the UBE, or an hour for the California bar, these things are just made, for you to be under that time pressure no matter what. So we have to just learn the speed of the game. Right. And we have to remember what the game is and not get caught up again on any trap, any section for too long. All right, so those are our common issues. We're now going to break this down, right? There's 2 phases for every essay, okay? There's the pre-writing phase, and then there's the writing phase. I think it's pretty novel to Legally Fit. I haven't seen too many other resources really focus on this pre-writing phase. So that's really what I want to focus on today. We'll talk a little bit about the writing phase. Again, we'll take somebody's work product and start to walk through it and see how we did there. But I want to emphasize this pre-writing phase, and we're going to use Remedies from July24 California bar to walk through it. Before we go through the essay, I want to introduce it to you. Okay. So the legally fit pre-writing phase is 4 steps. Read the question with intention, stop and think, outline, and determine your strategy. Okay. These 4 steps I do every single time when I read an essay. Let's go ahead and do the first one. Read the question with intention. So let me actually go back and let me talk to somebody who has not used Legally Fit before. Okay, I see most of my cameras are off. Well, let's see if I can call on somebody and they're there. So Jenny, are you there?
I'm
Jenny
here.
S. Okay, perfect. I'm correct in that, right? You have not used Legally Fit before?
No, I haven't.
Okay. All right. And so my question to you is, when you read the question for your very first time, kind of walk me through, what is your process? Like, what are you reading with the intention of doing? How are you going through that?
So when I do my essays, usually I read the questions, type them out. That's the first thing I do onto my document. And then I go back and read, okay, what are they looking for? And then I'll start reading through the fact pattern and issue spot and go from there.
Okay, issue spot. And you said I typed them out. I might have missed what them is. So you read the question and you said you type them out. What's them?
The questions.
Oh, the cause of the question at the
Yes.
end. Okay,
Yes.
nice. So go ahead and let me get that out of the way. That's going to be part of my organization. Let me type out the cause of the question. Then you go back and you read the fact pattern,
Mm-hmm.
and you essentially begin to issue spot.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And just while we're at it, let's just kind of, I'm curious to go all the way through it. After then you issue spot, what do you do next?
I start typing the roles and the issues that I see first. So I have
Okay.
that down, and then I go back and pull out the facts that I need for each issue.
Pull out the facts. And are you just kind of like, are you doing the full analysis, or are you literally just pulling out the facts that you need?
Um, I go between, because sometimes if I'm stuck, I'll just pull out facts that I think belong in some call of the
Section.
question. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then if I'm like, oh, I know this, I'll write out the analysis.
Okay. Okay, JD. So this is going to be, I think, a significantly different system that I'm excited to share with you. And it starts off with even how we read the question. So we're going to go through this, and then I'll come back to you, and I'm curious as to what your initial impression is. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's start off with stop and think. Excuse me, read the question with intention. So the first thing here, right? Number one, your primary goal when I read the question initially is to connect with the facts. So I want to humanize the fact pattern, reread sentences or paragraphs as necessary, use the left margin to write down 1 to 2 word summaries of each paragraph. Again, we're going to have to transition some of our advice to the new exam that a lot of us will be taking, that is remote if you're taking California. So yes, we might not be able to write down things anymore on the paper, right? We're still seeing if maybe we'll get this whiteboard or scratch paper and things like that. But all that to say, your goal with number one, and this is my primary goal when reading the question, is like, do I really see what's going on? And I'm trying to, just like with multiple choice, see like, have I seen something like this before, right? What's going on? My secondary goal is to jot down potential issues. Now, I want to really read this word for word and make sure this part right here is clear. Issue spotting is a 2-step process. This is the first step. The goal here is to use the right margin to write down potential issues as you see them triggered by the facts. No need to worry about accuracy here. You're simply jotting down what you think has potential. This is like a brain dump. As it comes to your brain, simply write it down. Don't stress over it. Don't analyze it right now. A lot of times we have that like obsession, right? We see the first issue. It was burglary. Well, let me start looking at the elements to see if it's met. I've had to train my brain, right, to not do that, to not hyper focus even on looking for the elements of burglary. I have to see if I can find other issues, right? And that's where it says here, it's important to avoid tunnel vision on flagged issues. You want to write the issues down and actively look for other ones, right? There's a couple of analogies I like to give when it comes to this. Today, I'll use the one of like a firefighter, right? You know, and let's say there's a burning apartment building, and there's people in the units. Let's say the firefighter goes in there and finds the first person and brings them outside, right? That firefighter cannot then celebrate bringing that first person outside. They can't, you know, sit there and go through all of the steps that they would like to, maybe giving them some water, some oxygen, you know, checking on them, going into a further analysis on that one person. No, what do they have to do? They have to go back into the apartment complex, a house, and get everybody out, and then, okay, what are we working with? So you kind of want that mindset. When you focus and again have tunnel vision on one, it bites us in the butt with time management, and then sometimes even seeing some of the other issues. All right, so let's read the question with intention. Now, here's the next one, right? This is a lot of things that a step that a lot of us don't take, and that's stopping for a second after you finish reading it, right? Without typing, without putting anything anywhere, just take a second to think, why are the parties upset and what do they want? Okay. What is the fact pattern being oddly specific about? In other words, what are the elephants in the room? And then 3, again, and then very intentional, if you didn't already do it, have I seen something like this before? And if so, how was it handled? Number 3 is all about patterns, right? And thinking to yourself, okay, have I done something like this? But number 1 and number 2 are really powerful questions to help you not only issue spot, but also see where the points are. Okay. We'll hopefully see this in the example that we do today of the oddly specific, but then there's also why the party's upset and what do they want that you can answer in all scenarios. Oddly specific. Before I move on from that, I want to talk a little bit more about that section. So oddly specific, right? I always give the analogy here. Like this is one of those scenarios, right? Where let's say you're talking with somebody and you make a joke, right? And then that joke just like completely goes over their head. And a lot of times, right, it's because somebody's like in their own head, you know, they're not fully present. So they're not picking up what you're putting down. They kind of miss the point. A lot of times that happens on essays, right? I can give you a fact pattern and your nerves and anxiety can be so high, right? Or you're so wired and focused that you're not really just picking up what the fact pattern is putting down. So when you focus on this, like, okay, there's times where they're trying to make it really clear when a fact is important, right? And things like that, you'll start to see that and realize I need to prioritize that fact in my discussion. All right, so that's stop and think. Now, after you stop and think, now it's time to outline, right? And then realize in our outlining, we have 3 steps that we do in outlining. We finalize the issue spotting, we organize our outline, and we rank and prioritize the issues. All right, so let's break each one down. So the first thing is to finalize your issue spotting. Now, I told you when you first read the question, your primary goal is just to connect with the facts and then like brain dump any issues that come up. Well, now this is after you've done all of those other steps. This is where it's like, okay, it's time to make my roadmap for myself for my discussion. So you want to bring in your reading comprehension, your stop and think questions, any potential issues you flagged, and the call of the question. You want to use all of that stuff and start to list out everything you're going to discuss. For all of our students that are taking and are in Legally Fit, this is where you should use your folder system as a cheat sheet for picking out those issues. The idea is that this allows you to issue spot with confidence in a checklist manner, as opposed to waiting for the right issues to just pop out at you. All right, we'll illustrate that today again when we jump to remedies. But yes, this is where you finalize your issue spotting. Now, next, organize your outline. Now, it's one thing to have all of your issues. The next thing is like, what's the order of operation? Sometimes you are discussing an area of law where there's a fixed organization template for it, right? If And you have to follow the call of the question. And please follow the call of the question. There's times where it's like people will mix it up. For example, with our remedies question, it says talk about damages and then equitable remedies. There's some people that started talking about equitable remedies first. That is a no-no, right? Like definitely follow the call of the question. And then on top of that, right, let's say you're discussing expectation damages and you're doing the full formula. You would never start with mitigation or cost avoided. No, you would start with loss and value, then other loss. So yes, there's times where it's fixed, but then there are other times where it might be more flexible and you can use some discretion on what issues you talk about in what order. A common area where there's discretion, let's say, is crim law, right? Where you have somebody who committed an assortment of crimes and you can decide what order you would like to discuss those various crimes. All right, so then you have to organize it. All right. And then, as we talked about with Anthony, the importance of prioritizing the issues. This step is necessary to properly manage your time. All issues, and look, just to what he said, are not weighted equally. This is the step where you assess where the points are. You're also making judgment calls on which discussions need an element by element breakdown versus a summary style analysis. As a quick refresher, this is the difference between element by element and summary style analysis. Okay. Element by element, you are literally breaking down each element with a heading, having a rule, analysis, conclusion. This is ideal for the discussions that are very important, very prioritized. Okay. This is also what I would consider my default. You want element by element to be your default. However, there are times, whether for time management purposes, or it's just simply not a prioritized issue, that you can rely on a summary style analysis, right? That's really just a little bit more to the point, okay? So these are the two different versions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to write them down. I'm gonna open it up to questions here in a second. But yes, these are the two different styles of writing that we wanna see. All right, and now let's go to the last step before we open it up for questions. And this is determine your strategy. So this is the last thing you want to do before you start writing, right? At this point, and maybe we can get away now, especially with the changes, we can start outlining on our computer instead of a separate piece of paper. But other than that, I have not done any analysis at all, right? And also too, to the point made earlier about what we bring over. I'm not bringing over, Jenny, any facts, any rules. I'm not typing out anything other than a skeleton outline of the various issues. Okay. So at this final phase, what I'm doing is determining my strategy. If you guys didn't know this already, there are essentially different types of exams that then warrant different types of strategies. The way I've labeled them, racehorse, that's a term that we've borrowed. We've seen that. But then I came up with in-depth analysis and organization puzzle. Let's talk about each one. A racehorse exam. This is one where you have a lot of issues to discuss. Okay, most issues seem to be relatively straightforward. There's just a lot to get through. Okay, Dorothy, what would you say is a subject where it's common that we get racehorse exams? What subject or subjects?
Crim law, like when you have a lot going on, different crimes.
Crim law, a lot of different crimes going on. Another really popular one, evidence. When there's like 5, 6, 7 pieces of evidence, you got to run through hearsay and character and all these things, right? A lot of those times, right, when you have a racehorse, you have to have that in your mind at the beginning to make sure you are moving fast, right? And here's how some of your strategy goes. Make sure your pre-writing phase is a little bit on the quicker side. Make sure you are very conservative and intentional about counter arguments. I don't need you reaching for counter arguments if this is a racehorse, only if it's a really strong one. You're focusing on less depth in order to discuss all, right? All the issues. And make sure you use a little bit more summary style, right? Especially for those non-prioritized issues. Next is an in-depth analysis. Okay, so this is when you have less issues. This is almost the opposite of a racehorse, something like con law, right? Maybe sometimes Civ Pro, where it's more so fewer issues and you have to really dive deep. Well, here you want to slow down and make sure you are catching every argument and angle that you need to make. You're making sure you're using all the applicable facts. You're being liberal with counter arguments. So you're slowing down for a second to think, is there any counter argument I can make here? Right. And then most discussions will be element by element breakdown, again, considering there's not that many issues to discuss. So again, just comparing these two, right? If you were having an essay, and let's say it was in-depth analysis, but for whatever reason you were just wired and treating it like a racehorse, well, you're going to miss points because you flew through the discussion. Now your discussion is only going to have, under 1,000 words because there wasn't a lot of issues to discuss, and there's just no depth to it. And now we're not going to do well, right? Even if you spotted all the right issues. And let's go vice versa. Let's say it was a racehorse, but you were treating it like an in-depth analysis. It started off, you're taking your time, you're really reaching for counter arguments. What's going to happen? We're going to run out of steam and out of time by the middle of that. And now all of a sudden we're scrambling for from issues 4 to 8. We only got really good discussions from issues 1 to 4. So now we're not finishing our racehorse. So that's why determining your strategy can be very important to make sure you know what you're dealing with and you can score well. And let's look at the last one, and that's organization puzzle. The fact pattern is hard to conceptualize, right? There's a lot going on, and you need a second to see how you are going to work through the problem. Every bar exam, I think, has at least one of these, right? And you have to just like take a beat. And by taking a beat, right, it says here, spend an extra 5 minutes in that pre-writing phase. Feel comfortable, even though you're on the bar exam. There's always a shortage of time, but this is actually the time to take 5 more minutes in your pre-writing phase to think through, how am I going to do this? Because if you rush into the writing, that can be detrimental. Make sure you understand all the facts and have an accurate picture of what's going on. Be very intentional about organizing your issues in a way that makes sense and flows. Okay, so that is the pre-writing phase. Again, we went through that pretty quickly for all those doing Legally Fit. We can go through that a little bit more gingerly in orientation, but that gives us the foundation now for us to jump into the remedies question from July 24 and try to use this one to put it into action. So give me 1 second. Let me sign into Zoom on my iPad. And while I do that, do I have any? Uh-oh. Do I have any questions so far yet? Was that a question? Oh, maybe somebody's mic was coming on. And then while we warm up to questions, Jenny, what is your initial impression? I think very different than the approach that you had. Yeah, give me some of your thoughts.
I like the step for prioritizing issues because I feel like that's where I struggle the most. And I kind of like rush into it. So I like that process and just taking a second and knowing that you have the time to organize better in that sense.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I think that overall, right, we get so antsy to just start writing that is just like a general rule of thumb of like, take our time, and in this case, prioritize the issues. What about the way I wanted you to read the question initially and kind of this 2-step process to issue spotting and taking off some of the pressure to spot all of the issues on that initial read?
I think that's good because sometimes when I would read it, I would look at the fact and be like, okay, I know I need to use this, but I'm not sure where. So just taking the extra step to just, okay, what is it used for? Where should it go?
Good, exactly. So yeah, awesome. So it sounds like a good initial impression, and now it's just going to be a matter of like putting this into action. And I will tell you, right, as with every skill, it's going to be a little difficult, right? Or not even difficult, let's say challenging, right? To just build a new habit. You're going to go through it slowly, but the more you practice this, everybody, it becomes second nature, and then your skill should improve. Okay, so let me go ahead. I think we're good on the tech here. We're in breaking down the bar. Stay calm. Okay. Let me stop share. Share screen. Okay. Natalie, are you with us? Can you speak?
Yes,
Awesome. Did you take the July 24 exam?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. How did you feel about this remedies question?
Oh, this one, I didn't like this one. This one was a lot for me. And I obviously didn't do well on this one. But yeah, yeah.
It was tough. Okay. Do you remember specifically why it was tough?
For me, let me let me pull out my essay question really quick. Can I the response? Because to refresh my
Mhm.
memory. Which one was this one? This was 5.
This is
Because I
question
know
number
there
5.
was for me, so there was this thing where at least I got stuck on some of the rules and like just the elements for certain types of remedies, but let me see if I can remember the specifics.
Okay. So
Yeah.
a little bit more so on just like maybe a comfort with the underlying law.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think I I spent too much time on I think it was rescission or and I don't know. There was just, it was just like this one was a mess for me for sure.
Okay. Well, let's work through it and then let's see if we can start to see how, one of the things that I have confidence now at this point, Natalie, is that like I truly believe that with the system that I've developed, like with every essay, right, which it has to be, right? There's always a path. There's always like a way to figure out what's going on. And sometimes it may be a struggle, but we just have to think harder and kind of rely on our systems to like get us there. So I'm going to try to show you, why and how these systems work to have that feeling. And let's see if it feels a little bit better as we go through it together. So I'm going to go ahead and walk us through this. I did the multiple choice questions with you all last week, and I really emphasized you guys like slow down, reread that sentence, right? So I'm going to do this whole question, and I'm going to show you how I read and have to process things as I go. Now, again, I was a big fan of being able to have pen and paper. So we're going to have to get into the habit of like typing some of these notes on maybe like a separate Word or separate document or separate screen with the software they'll be providing us. But let's cross that bridge on another day. For now, let's just do some traditional stuff. I'm just going to use my iPad and treat this as a piece of paper and like write on it. Okay. So it says years ago, Perry purchased 2 baseballs that he understood were autographed by members of championship teams. All right. So I'm a big fan of diagramming. So literally the first thing I'm going to do is just diagram that. Percy has 2 baseballs. I'm just going to draw a baseball there and a baseball there that he understood were autographed by members of championship teams, right? So, okay, I'm just like, all right, these are like some expensive sports memorabilia. 1 baseball was signed by the Junction City Jaguars team, and then in short, Jaguars. Okay, I'm going to write that as I go. Jags for short. And another was signed by the small town Sluggers team, otherwise Sluggers. Okay, Slugs. All right, let's just write Sluggers. Okay, because Perry knew nothing about the value of these baseballs, he entered into separate contracts with his niece, Denise, a sports memorabilia expert, to sell each of them. All right, Natalie, let's go back to you. We just talked about this already, right? Of in the stop and think phase, what are some of the things that the fact pattern is being oddly specific about? All right. So in this first paragraph, what's something they're being oddly specific about?
The fact that it was autographed.
Okay. What
And the
else?
fact that Denise is a memorabilia expert.
Okay. So I think there's something else that we're not catching, that she's a memorabilia expert and
And that Perry knew nothing about the value, like he doesn't know anything about the value of these baseballs.
exactly, right? So that's a good step, right, of what I'm saying here, right? Because what I'm gathering from this, Natalie, is like, okay, they're painting this very clear picture here that Perry has these baseballs that are seemingly worth some money, but he doesn't know anything about what he has. And then he has his niece, Denise, who is an expert in this realm. So yeah, I'm going to highlight this because Perry knew nothing about the value, and then Denise is a sports memorabilia expert, and then he entered into separate contracts. All right. If I were to summarize this paragraph, which I like to do on the left-hand side here, this is just about Perry / Denise, contracts, baseballs, right? Just something short and sweet, that if I need to go back to revisit any facts, I know where to look. Okay. Next paragraph. Aware of Perry's ignorance of the value of his baseballs. And again, already it's like, uh-oh. Denise told Perry that the Jaguars baseball was a counterfeit worth only $20. As a result, Perry sold the Jaguars ball to Denise for $20. In fact, the ball was worth $5,000 on the open market. So let's go ahead and write this. So I'm just going to write here, it was $20, but really it was worth 5,000. Excuse me, it was contracted for $20, but it was really worth 5,000. And the oddly specific part, very intentional. They're right, aware of his ignorance, right? And then we clearly have basically fraud that's occurring in this paragraph, right? So no need to like read too deep into it and spot all the issues. If I had to think, oh, also like soft triggers, you know, maybe there's like contract formation here, right? Maybe on the right-hand side up top when it says they entered into separate contracts. So contract formation. Here, I'm thinking fraud. Okay. Denise told Perry that the Sluggers baseball had a fluctuating value. So now we're talking about, okay. And the other thing I'm going to do here, right? This is all about Jaguars, Jags ball. And then this seemingly is about the Sluggers ball. Denise told Perry that the Sluggers baseball had a fluctuating value and that it could sell for at least $1,000 and likely more. Denise sold the Sluggers baseball to Bob for $10,000. All right, so we also have Denise to Bob for $10K, but told Perry that it had only sold for the $2,000 that she gave him. With the remaining $8,000 that Denise received from Bob, she purchased a used Voy car. Ironically, since Denise purchased the Voy, interest by collectors in Voy cars has vastly increased, and her car is now worth $20,000. All right, can I get a volunteer here? This should be, if your understanding of remedies is strong, a very, very in-your-face trigger for a particular type of remedy. When somebody arguably has wrongfully acquired funds and then taken those funds and put them into another asset. What is this triggering?
Is it a constructive trust?
Constructive trust and equitable lien, that area of law. Now, if we're talking about patterns, Aaron, right? And that's why we want to look at this all in the form of patterns. Constructive trust and equitable lien, what's the typical scenario? The typical scenario is they take wrongfully acquired money and they put it into what?
So like they take the money and they put it into another property or something, right? Like a constructive trust or an equitable.
They usually take it and put it into a home, right? Most fact patterns are they do it and they buy a home. And so that's, again, just like with the multiple choices patterns. Well, I still have wrongfully acquired money put into another asset that has increased in value. It's not a home, but this seems similar enough, right? So constructive trust / equitable lien. Good. Let's go ahead and summarize this. So the contract for the Sluggers ball ultimately was $2,000. All right. But then it says that Denise then sold it to Bob for $10,000. Okay, so that's what happened with the Sluggers ball. Denise still has the Jaguars baseball and the Voy car. All right, so we just write that down. Denise has the Jags ball and the Voy car. After learning of Denise's deception concerning the baseballs, Perry filed a lawsuit against her for fraud. The court has ruled in Perry's favor. Dorothy, what is the significant importance of that part right there? Perry filed a suit for fraud. The court has ruled in Perry's favor.
You don't have to argue it. Like, you know, there was a fraud that occurred and he's going to be awarded something because it's in his favor. Like, they're just telling you straight up.
So when we jump into our analysis, and as with all remedies questions, we have to assess how much of the underlying law am I going to talk about? Is this a 90-10 underlying law remedies? Is this 50-50, 60-40, whatever it may be? So what are we already kind of leaning towards based off of this right here?
It's mostly just remedies. You don't have to really go into the contract formation. He's already won.
Exactly. He's already won. And I also think that that's also something really to catch here. Did they file suit for breach of contract?
Mm-mm.
Not necessarily. He said, yeah, filed suit for fraud, right? So I think that's something that we'll keep in mind. But all that to say, yes, we have this here. Okay. And then the call of the question is, what damages can Perry recover and what equitable remedy or remedies? So before we take a second to issue spot on our own, what I want to do is use that powerful question, as I mentioned, of why are the parties upset and what do they want? All right. So Anthony, I want to go back to you, right? Somebody who they're going into their first time. It might have been some time since you took remedies. And I want to show you and everybody else for that matter, how you can do this step without even knowing the law, right? Like this is just a very human perspective of why the party's upset. What do they want? So we're going to start off with Perry here. That's our guy. Yep. Perry. And what would Perry likely want in this situation?
Likely his money. He was definitely cheated out of at least another $8,000 for one of the balls, and depending on what the first ball, he sold that one for $20. So, likely his money, like his compensation, or the ball.
So for the slugger's ball, he would either want the 8K difference. Okay, what are the options?
Or the car, which has risen in value.
Okay, let me get the car, right? Which is actually now 20K. We'll see if that's an option. But hey, it's like, you know what? You use that to get that car. Actually, I'll take the car. Okay, there's another one. That's pretty practical as a remedy here. Or actually, I guess not so much. I mean, well, let's still put it down. And there's a reason why we won't be able to discuss it. But yeah, what's another option on what could be something he would want for the slugger's ball? Can anybody see it? Want to shout it out?
Is it to get it back? Because she still
Yeah,
still had it in her possession.
exactly. And he doesn't have the slugger's ball anymore, but still, that is something of like, you know what? Let me get my ball back, right? All right, so that's the slugger's ball. Let's go to the Jaguar's ball and kind of break it down like that. Okay, and let's keep going. So I think you have already a little formula here. You could just kind of mirror that. So what will be the first thing you might want with the Jaguars ball?
Replevin back, give it back. I think because I think that.
So that's the actual remedy. So I want you to kind of base it in like, you know, not so much of a title of a doctrine, but more so like a genuine interest.
Yeah.
So
give it back.
So you're saying I want the ball back.
Right. The difference in the difference in the amount, so the money, what it's actually worth.
Yeah, so I think that was an $1,800 difference. No, $4,800 difference. No, is that 49.80 difference? It was only $20. Yeah. So there you go, lawyers and math. 49.80 because they sold it for 2,000. Excuse me, they contracted for $20, but it was worth 5,000. There we go. All right. Now, what else about the Jaguars ball might we want? And this one, somebody who has been a little bit more refreshed with remedies might catch this pattern from other questions, but there's something else under the circumstances. Very, very interesting remedy here, right? That basically there's a risk involved, inherent in the situation, inherent in the facts. There's some risk, right, that Perry would like to avoid and prevent from happening with regards to the Jaguars ball.
Can I say it?
Oh yeah, go for it, Aaron. You got it.
I think it's to stop any kind of sale. So
Yes.
injunction.
Prevent the sale. Why is this? Just articulate it for it quickly, Aaron. Why is this such an inherent risk under the circumstances?
Because if it's sold, then he can't get it back.
And Denise seemingly is in the business of selling these items, right? Reselling it, buying it and reselling it. So yeah, she's already sold one to another buyer. So you want to talk about that risk and assess that and realize, that he's going to want to prevent that from happening with this ball as well, with the Jaguars ball. Okay, so everybody, I hope you're starting to see literally just by thinking through this very logical, why are they upset? What would they want? You can start to piece out actual doctrines you need to discuss for these. Doesn't mean they'll work, right? But it's giving you ideas of what to talk about. All right, so we've read the question. We did the stop and think, okay? And so now we need to outline. Now, here's where I want to just give everybody, I'm just going to give you guys, 3 minutes, right? If you have a remedies outline nearby, if not, you just want to go off of memory. I want you to give it your best shot, okay, at making your outline now for this discussion. All right, take a screenshot of this right here if you want to be able to still see this. I'm going to go back to the actual question for us all. So screenshot if you need it. All right, and then now here's the actual question. Okay, so go ahead and take 3 minutes and try to outline on your own. Okay. All right, let's start to walk through this on our own. All right, so Natalie, I'm gonna go back to you. You still with me, Natalie?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Awesome. Okay. So how do you feel about the issue spotting so far? Even before we, even got through it together, you did it for 3 minutes, but even that lead up, did you feel a little bit stronger possibly with spotting some of the issues?
I did. Yeah, the only thing is just remembering the law. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think with time that it would get better.
Okay. So let's talk about that and then what I believe can help. So this is what we call in Legally Fit our folder system. Let me erase these notes, right? So for every single subject, right, you have a folder system that basically is I like to call those like Russian nesting dolls, right? Where one fits inside of another until you have just one. It's big, but you break it up and inside is the same thing, but just more detailed or more small or smaller. Well, the idea is that everything you need to know for remedies, okay, everything you need to know for remedies is in these three sections. It's only 3 levels for our first level for remedies. Other classes might have like 6 or 7. Remedies is pretty straightforward. So the first thing you do is just figure out of your first level, what is at play. So Natalie, torts, contracts, and property, out of these 3, what would you say is at play here?
Contracts.
Contracts. Anything else?
Property, because I thought of replevin or like returning, because I guess the baseball.
So no, this property, I guess we could also change it just to get rid of that confusion or potential confusion. This is more so focused on real property, right?
Okay.
So nothing that we'll learn will go under that because we're not dealing with any real property here. But how about torts? Can you see why we would be connected to torts here?
Yeah, now that I think about it, it's like a chattel. So
Yeah, and it's more so connected to the fraud issue, right? Like fraud is a little bit of like that tort world as well. So let's go ahead now and go to our second level. So again, you can literally use this as a step-by-step. If you were to spend time memorizing this, you're working through your folders. We're going to talk about damages because it tells us that. We're going to also consider, right, these other ones as the equitable remedies. We're going to talk about damages, right? And then we're going to look at always special remedies. What about specific performance, though? Question mark there. What about specific performance? Is this going to be worth a discussion on this essay?
I would say no.
Okay, so we're going with no. I saw a lot of people talk about specific performance on this remedies essays from all of the one-on-ones that I've had so far. And I agree. No, I don't think specific performance would be a good discussion here. Can we say so? Can we say why, Natalie? Can we say why with confidence of why I'm not going to talk about specific performance?
Not with confidence, but I think what I
Yeah.
remember correctly was something like you have to have like a valid contract. There's something about like there's something in the like the elements that I just know or have a feeling it doesn't apply. I don't know which one it is. I have
Okay.
to look at my notes.
So it's actually a bigger picture reason. I'll give it one more shot for anybody to volunteer if they can see why it's not from a big picture a good doctrine to discuss here. And if not, I'll give it myself. But yeah, can anybody see why specific performance is not really needed?
Mostly a seller's remedy.
It's mostly a seller's remedy. Okay, I think there's something else that we can go with.
Is it because he's gonna want so the courts are not inclined to like tell someone what to do or like give the ball back?
For goods, yeah, it's typically with
Goods.
real property. That's kind of like in the details. So let's back into it, Dorothy.
Okay.
Specific performance from a remedy perspective, big picture. What does specific performance get you?
Them to perform, like if you're selling property, for them to
There we
perform.
go. It gets you to perform your contractual obligations. Here, if we go back to the fact pattern, here, did Denise fail to perform?
No.
Exactly, right? Specific performance is like, I'm contracting with Dorothy for her to sell me her house, for her to sell me her laptop, and she doesn't do it. I want specific performance to force her to do it. I want to force her to perform. This is not a failure to perform scenario to then use specific performance to force them. This is you performed and you performed fraudulently. And so now we're looking for, again, other remedies that are better fit for this scenario. So yeah, a lot of us fell into specific performance, but for those reasons, I do not think that this was a worthy discussion under the facts. Okay, so again, what we're doing, Natalie, is we're going through our folder system and doing this with confidence, right? So yes, I'm going to consider these. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to consider these. Then you can go into your third level, right? And actually, let's just go into our fourth level and then kind of see from these what we'll talk about. So Natalie, I'm just going to run down this list. I'll give you your first shot at it, and then I'll go behind you and then, you know, give any corrections. Actual damages under torts. Are we going to discuss it? Yes or no?
Yes.
Nominal damages. Are we going to discuss it? Yes or no?
Yes.
Punitive damages. Are we going to discuss it? Yes or no?
I would say no because it's a contract, but then again, you for contract law, but then you were talking about how it's torts, so I would say no, but I don't know now.
So you got to pick a side exactly when you're
Okay,
unsure.
I'm gonna say no.
You're
No.
gonna say no, okay. And then recovering for loss other than personal injury, pure economic, emotional distress.
No.
No. Limitations on damages. Are we going to discuss?
I did on my response, but
Okay, so we're going to go with yes. All right, so let's do it section by section. I would go with yes on actual damages. I would go with no on nominal. Nominal damages is a really good discussion for things like negligent, or excuse me, intentional torts where there was no actual damage. Not a really, you know, I don't think it's wrong. If you did talk about it, there's not much to talk about, and it would just be like a couple of lines, right? So I'm going to put, you know, instead of an X here, I'm just going to put like a little squiggly line. If you did talk about it, it wouldn't have been the end of the world as long as you did it quickly. However, I do think punitive damages I would have talked about here. Again, focusing on the fact that like it said sued for fraud, and I'm kind of like leaning into this tort is connected to this as well. And so if so, this is a perfect example for punitive damages, where it's you're trying to punish somebody for willful or wanton conduct. And so here, because this was so clearly fraudulent, and again, back to those facts, right? That they were so intentional about, aware of the ignorance, right? He knew nothing, right? All these things I think I can highlight in that punitive damage section. All right, so we have all of that. And I do think under the circumstances, since there's not a whole lot to talk about, I do think limitations on damages is also worth a discussion. I don't think it's a long discussion, and I'll sit with it in more detail when I get there, but I am thinking I'm going to do this quickly. All right, next thing we go through is injunction. So let's do the same thing. Natalie, run through it quickly. TRO, are we going to talk about it?
I would say yes.
Yep, I agree. Preliminary injunction.
So I got confused between preliminary and permanent, so I said no on both, but I don't know anymore.
Okay, so yeah, I personally so like let's get back into again knowing the law now and like this and what the remedies do. So at the end of the day, right, the way it works is a permanent injunction is something that forces somebody to do or not do something permanently, right? It's like, oh, you're going to build a freeway in the back of my property. I want a permanent injunction to prevent you from building that freeway, right? Like my big focus is permanent. And then because you might be moving fast, I want to get a preliminary injunction to prevent you from doing that before the trial, right? Before the case is finalized, because it may take a long time. It may take a year for us to hear this in court. So I'm gonna get a preliminary hearing. And if a preliminary injunction is still gonna take too long and you might move that fast, let me get a TRO, right? Because that's like for something I can get in a very short time frame to, again, prevent you from doing something. So permanent is the end goal there, and you work backwards based off of the sense of urgency. Now, under these circumstances, is permanent injunction like really our big focus here?
I would say no. No.
Yeah, I don't think so, right? Like, this is not like, again, you're going to build something. I want to like, the whole case is about stopping you from doing something. This is more so like, hey, like, I just don't want you to do something while we're in the middle of this, right? So this is, I think, a little bit more along the lines of a TRO and a preliminary injunction. And you can do those strategically in an efficient manner because they share essentially all the same elements. There's some slight differences. If you're going to talk about permanent injunction, just something really quick, but I would not spend a lot of time here. I would just kind of illustrate just what I just said, and I wouldn't focus on so much of an in-depth analysis at all. Does that make sense now, Natalie, how we would use these three?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah.
Good. So just like that, we would walk through those. There's a big focus. I'm prioritizing this TRO. And then next, I'll put 2 stars. I'm prioritizing preliminary injunction. I'm also prioritizing punitive damages. All right. And then, yes, let's keep going. Then we're going to get into restitution. Okay. So there's restitution. Actually, I didn't consider this one earlier. Let's go to our rule for restitution damages under torts. Restitution damages force the defendant to pay the plaintiff the reasonable value of a benefit unjustly obtained. Does that seem to be applicable to our scenario?
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? So yeah, let's go ahead and definitely star that. All right. Oops. That check mark went in the wrong place. It was down here. Cool. All right. Next is replevin. Okay. Do you remember what replevin is about, Natalie, or do I need to give a refresher?
Isn't it has to do like giving back the property or giving back the item?
Yes. So this is about essentially, it's like a fight over who has possession over the item while we're in litigation, right? And so this would be a great opportunity, right, for replevin to say, you know what, let me hold on to this Jaguars baseball, right? The one that has not been sold. Let me hold on to this baseball while we're litigating this. So yes, replevin would be another good one. Ejectment. Nobody's on the property, anybody's land, right? So that's a no. All right, next, equitable restitution. Are we going to talk about constructive trust and equitable lien?
Yes.
Absolutely, for the slugger's ball. All right, so now we have finished the tort side. All right, now we go to the contract side. Okay, and again, I know we're going through this gingerly. The goal, everybody, is that we know the law so well that we're actually flying through this, going through this at a pretty quick speed. But all right, so let's go with damages. So expectation damages, are we going to talk about it?
Yes.
Yeah. Are we going to talk about reliance damages?
No.
Reliance damages is for a situation where somebody relies to their detriment, and
Yeah.
some other, like, it's good for that scenario. Yeah, I don't really think we have that. Like, sure, if you're not know what else to talk about, put a squiggly line there because it's such a damages focused question. But yeah, you would just really talk about why this is not applicable. So you would do that very quickly. What about restitution damages?
I put yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of the 3, which damages do you think should be prioritized?
I think expectation and restitution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Restitution. I actually think expectation damages is, and again, I'll put 1 star in it, but I don't think you really discuss expectation damages in detail. Let's phone a friend here. Can I get a volunteer? Can somebody articulate why expectation damages actually isn't a suitable remedy for Perry? Perry actually doesn't want to lean into this. Yeah, De'Ara?
I think it's going back to one of the facts that they kind of oddly were specific about, the fact that he didn't know much about like the value of the baseballs.
Okay, so I don't think it's exactly that. Let's go into our rule and then see if we can back into it, dear. So go ahead and read. Let me erase some of this stuff. Go ahead and read this paragraph right here about what expectation damages is from a big picture. And read it out loud for us, please.
Okay. Expectation damages is the general measure of damages for breach of a traditional contract. Expectation damages award the plaintiff the value of the benefit that the plaintiff expected to receive from the contract. Expectation damages are designed to put the non-breaching party in the position that they would have been had the contract been performed.
Okay. Again, was there essentially a breach here?
No, there wasn't a breach.
There really wasn't a breach. What was the contract for the Jags ball? Dear, what was the contract price for the Jags ball?
Oh, it was for $20.
Did Perry receive that $20?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so he expected to receive $20 and he got that $20. What was the contract price for the Sluggers ball?
It was I think she said it was at least $1,000.
But the contract, it said she gave him 2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so assuming that was what the contract, because also to everybody, I wasn't sure if based off of how this read, if you guys are familiar with the consignment store situation, it almost seemed like this contract for the Sluggers could have been consignment, where it wasn't like the other ball where it was just like up front, here's the money for it, right? It seems like she was kind of like, all right, I'm going to sell it. She sold it and then told him it only sold for so much and then gave him that money. So yeah, it's a little unclear exactly what the arrangement was on the Sluggers ball, but assuming you're right, it was a $2,000 contract. Again, like she gave what she promised. So the issue here is that expectation damages aren't going to really help you. And so for example, let's say you have a really expensive watch, Deara. Let's say your watch is worth $1 million and there's no fraud involved at all, and you decide to sell it to me for $500, right? Can you later sue me for expectation damages because you undervalued and undersold that watch?
No.
No, that's contracts, right? We agreed to that price. There's no fraud involved. There's nothing like that. So in that regard, we still have to remain close to that principle that expectation damages is when you didn't get what you were promised, right? So again, all that to say, I don't think expectation damage is the big focus. If anything, just to, again, highlight those things. But when expectation damages aren't ideal, you look into the alternatives. And here, restitution is the best alternative. It's going to be somewhat connected, I think in large part connected to that restitution damages we talked about under torts. It's all about just that unjust enrichment, right? So even if you didn't talk about it under torts, as long as you talked about it under contracts, that would have been, I believe, sufficient. All right, specific performance, we said no for the reasons stated already, right? And then under special remedies, we had rescission. And Natalie, am I going to go ahead and talk about reformation?
So I put reformation.
Yeah, I
but
said why not?
yeah.
I mean, again, it's a long shot, but what is basically the basis of that argument of why you would talk about reformation?
So let me see. There was something about I put something about like changing the contract.
Yeah.
And
It's
then the
like,
fact that there was like unilateral misrepresentation, and then I guess a I don't know if unilateral mistake would apply, but the
so
misrepresentation.
yeah, so from a big picture, what I'm looking for here is that reformation is all about a remedy that says instead of undoing the contract, we want to rewrite the contract. So in theory, you could say, let's do a reformation to rewrite this contract with terms that are more reasonable, more favorable. Under the circumstances is unlikely. This is not a traditional case for reformation. Traditionally, reformation is like when there's a clerical error, right? Or a mistake in that kind of way. So unlikely, but again, it's kind of like, you know, this is like on my maybe list and like if I have time. All right. So there we go. All right. I was making a working outline while you all were too in that 3 minutes. So let me stop share here and then share my outline that I was making and see if I need to add anything to it. So the first thing I have is what damages can Perry recover? The first thing I'm going to do is talk about underlying law. And to the point with Dorothy, right? I think this is like a 95-5, right? Or a 90-10 on underlying law. So this is going to be extremely quick, right? I'm just going to put contract formation, like rule. It requires offer acceptance and consideration. Here, the fact pattern simply states that they entered into separate contracts. Formation of the contract seems to be no problem. However, there's the potential, or however, there was fraud, which may be used in our remedies discussion to get out of the contract. But it looks like the contract was properly formed. And then torts, as discussed, or as mentioned in the fact pattern, Perry filed a suit against her for fraud. This fraud likely could result in tort remedies as to be discussed below. So again, very, very short and sweet. I saw some responses where we had page and a half long discussions of underlying law. And I think under the circumstances, that wasn't where the points were. So we had tort damages, actual damages, punitive damages, limitations. All right. And then we can also talk about legal restitution if we wanted to here. I think we have options here because I had restitution under contracts. It's more popular there. So maybe I'll just leave it there. I don't think we need to discuss it in both places. So I'll take that out from here and just focus on it here. Expectation, not best option under circumstances. Reliance, not best option under circumstances. Restitution. All right, what equitable remedies? Replevin, to see about getting the ball back. And look at the order I'm kind of going in. It's like almost like a logical order. Replevin is to try to get the ball back, to hold on to it during this whole trial. Maybe if not, let me go for an injunction to prevent you from selling it during this trial with a focus on TRO. And then lastly, can I get a rescission for this? Since that Jaguars ball is still in possession, can I actually get this ball back? Okay. And so again, maybe if I wanted to, we could talk about reformation, right? But then again, unlikely. Okay. So rescission for the Sluggers ball. Dorothy, really quickly, why is rescission for the Dorothy ball? Why is rescission for the Sluggers ball unlikely? Dorothy?
Sorry, this is the one where she still has it.
The Sluggers ball has been sold to Bob.
And rescission is to unlikely to undo the contract.
Yep.
She performed her part. She sold.
Well, to undo the contract would mean to do what, right? If it was a sale of a baseball,
money to get it back because it's gone. Bob has it.
Exactly. It's been sold to a third party. So that would be the discussion there. That rescission is unlikely under the circumstances because it would involve now taking the ball away from what we can assume here is a bona fide purchaser, right? And so that's unlikely. So we could talk about that. I think that can be, something quick, fun, easy, worth some points. I don't think we need to talk about reformation again. Once was just fine. And then, the big focus here was constructive trust and equitable lien, with more of a focus on constructive trust since it rose in value. Okay, so Natalie, let's kind of just rewind and summarize here for a second. Number one, right? Again, we kind of went through it gingerly because, again, we're trying to refresh on our law. But do you see how having a checklist style of issue spotting is beneficial?
Oh, yeah.
Good. And that's the idea, is that like something like this is what builds confidence while you're on the exam and while you're in this, where it's like, it's not just like what pops out at you, because you're running the risk of like something just not popping up in your head, So when you do this, you're in your head like, okay, first level, okay, I'm in torts. What are my different tort damages? It's actual, it's nominal, it's punitive, and it's like economic loss and things like that. Which ones am I going to talk about? Actual, yes. Punitive, yes. There's willful and wanton. Nominal, no, that's for intentional, right? You're literally doing that at that fast pace. So that's the goal, everybody, and in my eyes, on what you want to do for every subject to really become good, right? To get that floor, that foundation of your essay writing to 65, is that for every subject, you have the ability to do that. And that's why 50% of the essays is having that strong understanding of the law, to know what are the common scenarios for constructive trust and equitable lien. What does replevin get you? Is this fit or not? What does expectation damages get you? Again, for all those that talked about specific performance in great detail, I'm connecting that to not a strong understanding of the law, because in theory, yeah, this is not really a good application of specific performance because the parties did perform. All right, so any questions on this essay as far as the pre-writing phase, us working through it, on what issues we're on here? Any questions before we transition? Okay. Out of curiosity, Natalie, it sounds like you brought up your Remedies essay while we were going through this.
I did, yeah. Because
Are we
I was
already
like,
starting to, with just this, are we already starting to see what could have improved that score?
oh yeah, especially with the like just organization. I think mine was just like a mess. And yeah, definitely the checklist would have helped a lot. And I think just the way you've organized it, like how you had the tort damages and the contract damages, because I
Yes.
kind of mixed it all together.
So
Yeah.
let's actually talk about that for a second too. Thank you for that reminder. So the last step was, what type of essay is this? Is it a racehorse? Is it a in-depth analysis, or is this an organization puzzle? Right? So if you were to guess here, Natalie, what would you say this is?
I think it's an organizational puzzle, but I could definitely see like the racehorse element just because there's potential for like for me, I talked a little bit about reformation. I talked way more than I should have about expectation damages, and that
Exactly.
just took up so much time. So yeah.
I do. So here's a bit of advice. There are times where it is like a little bit of a hybrid, and I think that's 100% accurate. I think we have a hybrid of an organization puzzle, and I think we have also a little bit of a racehorse nature. And so, yes, I'm really happy that you pointed out that organization, because again, yeah, that's one thing I didn't see a lot of in the stuff that I've seen is good organization. And I do think this is really clean, right? It's like underlying law. Let's handle it. Question number one was about what damages can Perry recover. And actually, this should be number two, right? So then it's what equitable remedies. So I use the call of the question to organize it. And then I also organized it by ball, right? So then that way it was clean in that way as well. Instead of using the doctrines as my major headings here, I actually used the various balls. And then that way it was clean on which one we were talking about. So I think there were some other options on what could be clean and organized here as well. So, but yeah, that was something where it's like, okay, how am I going to do this? So that's really good observation. Okay, so the last thing we can do in 10 minutes is, do I have any volunteers that want to put their essay into the chat, and we can bring it up and more have now a focus on the actual writing and looking to see now, even if we spot the right issues, are we soaking up all of the points, right? And then overall, we can even do a critique on the outline, the organization, and see something like that. So would anybody like to offer that? Again, this is for the purpose of research, Trust Circle. And if you want to, you can also directly message it to me, and it doesn't have anybody's name on it. You could directly message it to me in the chat, and then we can bring it up, and it won't be associated with any person. Let me stop share. Okay, I have a taker. So I'll just wait for you to send me essay number 5. Everybody's like, okay, anonymous, yeah, I'll do that. Okay, all right, I have one. Let's go ahead and bring it up. Okay, and then let me actually get one more, because just for purposes, the one that I got is handwritten. I think it'd be easier to go through one that's printed. I'll come back to this one if we can, but I want to start off with a typed one.
You want me to do mine, D?
And then I got another one in here, so let me see if we're good to go with this one. Okay, perfect. All right, share screen, Preview, here we go. All right, so let's first just take a look at, also too, just out of curiosity, can the person also that sent me this message me what their score was for this essay? Because I'm curious to see. But in the meantime, I'll give kind of my guess based off of what I'm seeing. So the first thing we see here is the underlying law discussion. All right. So we have nothing too long, right? But we have a little paragraph, 2 paragraphs about applicable law information, not bad. The intentional misrepresentation, right, / fraud discussion. I think that's a little bit longer than what it needed to be, possibly, again, considering it was already decided. Okay. We have expectation damages. Then we have some more detail on consequential. Okay. Specific performance, again, which we were saying is an issue that we don't think will probably come up. We have replevin. We have constructive trust. And then we have rescission, right? So a handful of good issues, right? But let's go ahead and go with one of the issues that is heavily triggered here, and that is, or heavily prioritized, and that's constructive trust. Okay, so let's see again if we're soaking up all the points here. Constructive trust is when the defendant unlawfully obtains property that would be unjustly for them to keep. Plaintiff is the property back if they can show by clear and convincing evidence of tracing, and they're entitled to the appreciation of the property. So as always, and we just know this to be a factor, right? It's the inherent difficulty of the bar exam. It is memorization, right? So let's go to our rule 4. Actually, I have to share my entire desktop for you all to see this. Let me minimize these other things. Let's go to our rule 4, constructive trust. Okay. So we have this intro paragraph, and then we have our elements. Defendant has gained title to the property that can be solely traced to the other property that was wrongfully acquired by the defendant. Defendant's retention of the property will result in unjust enrichment. Plaintiff has no adequate remedy at law. Okay, and then we have some of this other, like the advantages you could just talk about. So the reality is we had 3 elements here. Okay, I'm going to copy these. I'm going to bring up back our Word document. So this is in theory how this should start to look. Constructive trust, discussion. Let's paste this. Let's bold and underline. Let's go back here. Let's grab this rule. Okay. Let's take out elements. Sometimes you can put your elements in your main rule. If you want to get away with it, you could say something like, this remedy is granted if the following elements are met. Again, I usually like to put my elements up there and then just repeat them as headings if it's a breakdown, element by element breakdown. But for now, we're just going to do that. All right. So, boom. First off, this is now the structure of what the constructive trust discussion should have looked like. Big rule statement, could have mentioned the elements, and then a heading for each element. Okay. Then what we would do is break each one down. So let's do this together. And then what we'll do is compare to the one that we were submitted by our volunteer. So I'm going to type my analysis that I think would be thorough, and we're going to do this on the spot. So defendant has gained title to the property that can be solely traced to the other property that was wrongfully acquired by the defendant. All right, so you have multiple things to prove in this. You always want to do one at a time. You have to talk about the property that was wrongfully acquired and how it can be solely traced to the other property, right? So here, Perry is going to argue that this started with wrongfully acquired property because Denise gained an additional, and in this case, we're talking about the slugger's ball. And we said in our notes that that was an additional $8,000 difference. So we want to go ahead and do that math and put gained an additional $8,000 due to her fraudulent behavior. Dorothy, is this conclusory if we were to stop right here?
Yes.
Yes, we have to describe that fraudulent behavior and just bring over those facts, right? So we're going to put here, Perry knew nothing about about his baseballs and their worth. Denise was aware of his ignorance as to the value, and to take advantage, she lied and told him that the Sluggers baseball only sold for $2,000 when in fact she sold it, not even just sold it, when she sold it to Bob, use all the facts, for $10,000. Period. And there we go. We've now talked about the wrongfully acquired, and then now we can go into the solely trace. Moreover, the void car can be solely traced to the 8K wrongfully acquired because the facts state, in parentheses, with the remaining 8K, I'm looking at my fact pattern on the iPad, with the remaining 8K that Denise received from Bob, she purchased a used void car. Boom. Dorothy, like, I'm curious as to your impression or your thought on this, not impression, your thought, like, how difficult do you find it of what I just did? I know it's not always natural to do it, but part of me wants to always think for myself and for everybody else, once we have this habit, it's easy. But is there a difficulty that you're seeing out of curiosity with what I just did?
No. So it's frustrating to me to see you do it because it's not as difficult. I don't know. No, it's frustrating that I am so conclusory when I write, when I know the formula, and I don't know, not at all. Like just you even outlining this today and understanding the folder system, it's not difficult at all. It's insane seeing you do it. But I do think it's with practice and repetition, to be confident and comfortable in this approach.
Yes. It's a big test of confidence, right? Because yeah, like, and the last thing I want to add on to what Dorothy said, everybody, is that legal writing, in my opinion, is not necessarily, it's not difficult, but it is a challenge in its simplicity because we're so intelligent, because we're so fast-paced moving, because we can multitask and process so many things. And we can be talking about constructive trust, but thinking about rescission and the next thing. Like, this forces you to simplify it, focus on one, and just lay it out, right? Even as I just mentioned a second ago, there's two things I have to prove in here. Let me do both. Let me talk about the wrongfully acquired and then the solely traced. And when I was doing so, I wasn't pulling things out of my butt. I wasn't sitting there like trying to use the most fancy words and articulation to do it. I was simply using the facts, right? And bringing it over one at a time. All right, let's do the next one really quickly. Defendant's retention of the property would result in unjust enrichment. This one's going to be a little bit more straightforward. Here, Perry is going to argue that Denise's retention of the sluggers, or actually in this case, of the void car, would result in unjust enrichment because, let me think how I'm going to go about this. And I'm going to go, right, because one, it was wrongfully acquired, but two, right, she lied in order to wrongfully acquire this money and now has benefited from this asset, right? So something along those lines. So here we go. Void card will result in unjust enrichment because Denise has committed fraud to her benefit. She fraudulently lied to Perry to gain $8,000 that she then used to purchase a car. Under the facts, it would be unjust to allow her to retain this benefit. Now let's talk about it. I don't know if you saw that there. I'm kind of like struggling through, and then I recalled my cataloged argument. Right, when I'm talking about unjust enrichment, I kind of remembered, oh yes, that's the type of sentence I like to make, right, or articulate. Under the facts, it would be unjust to allow her to retain this benefit, right? So that's what I'm going to go ahead and end with, and I think that's sufficient for number 2. And then number 3, plaintiff has no adequate remedy at law. So let's take a look back at our rule for adequate remedy at law. In other words, damages are inadequate. Look out for a fact that the defendant has no other assets apart from the wrongfully acquired property. So our blueprint is telling us what to look out for. So we don't have anything about Denise's financial status to know if she has other money. But let's just go ahead. And again, when you're in these situations, you don't have to so much focus on, what's the right outcome? Just argue both sides. I'm going to argue, the real quick side from Denise. Denise is going to argue that money damages are adequate and the ideal remedy and is the ideal remedy under the circumstances. Perry can simply be awarded money to be made whole. All right. And then I got to go with Perry's argument. Perry is going to argue that money damages are not adequate. And look, remember what we said. Go back to the rule here. It's all about the defendant has no other assets, right? Like, why would I sue? I'm not going to be able to get my money. Either damages are going to be limited, or again, this person is poor or doesn't have any money. I'm going to try to use that angle as the basis of my argument. Check this out. Perry is going to argue that money damages are not adequate because there are no facts to suggest that Denise is financially sound to support a damages award or to pay a damages award. Moreover, she transferred the entire $8K that she wrongfully acquired into the car. All right. That's my argument. Could I go more in depth here? Could I do more? Is there another argument out there? Maybe. But this is also the reminder when you're in the flow and you're going, you got to look for that, like, that power punch argument. It may not always be the strongest punch, right? But again, I made an argument on both sides, something that was good. I addressed it, right? I'm not too concerned about even like what's the right answer here. I just did an argument on both sides, and I'm just going to go with the court will likely find that there is no adequate remedy at law. The court will likely find that all elements are met, and the court should grant the constructive trust remedy, thus giving Perry the void car valued at $20K. All right. So again, stressing that importance that don't get so, sometimes we're so caught up in that obsession of like, what is it? No, get the art. If you're in that and you know the law, chances are it's just like you can make an argument on both sides and the conclusion doesn't really matter. All right. So oftentimes that's the case. Now we just finished that. Let's look at this one that we were submitted by comparison. All right, here Denise unlawfully sold the slugger ball when she was fraudulent in the price amount when she told Perry that she only sold it for $2,000, and in reality she was able to sell the ball for $10,000. So we have some detail there. Good. Denise used the money to obtain a void car, the profit she unlawfully obtained. Since the slugger ball is no longer with Denise, it would be unjustly for her to keep the void car in her possession. Thus, by clear and convincing evidence, Perry could show through tracing that Denise is okay, and only gave $2,000 to Perry, and he is entitled to the full amount. Even though the void is worth double the amount of the price of the ball, Perry's entitled since Denise obtained the ball unjustly. Okay, so overall, I think that then again, this is actually a decent analysis, right? It's just this is the version, right, for a prioritized issue where I'm able to say, you know what? I want to pass this person just based off of this flushed out discussion on this main issue on this essay. This is squeezing out a lot of the points. But again, I do want to give some credit that overall, this shows you understand the law, right? Also, too, it's kind of making me, because again, we didn't remember our elements up top. And this paragraph is very long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the 9th level or ninth line. I don't like paragraphs longer than 4 to 5. Sometimes I go over 2, but rarely, right? And so what do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So I had 7 here myself. Could even like separate this out right here. So keep that in mind. But yes, overall good. Let's compare to one other and let's go see if we can find the constructive trust discussion on this one. Statute of frauds, hardships, rescission. Okay, so we didn't have, it looks like a constructive trust. Oh, here it is. Can party obtain a constructive trust where the proceeds from a contract have been spent? What's called trace proceeds following the contract and place a constructive trust over the assets. Okay, so again, partly is just that we didn't have a full rule with the elements. But then our analysis is very short here. Here, as Denise spent the $8,000 profit she made from the Sluggers baseball on the void call, Perry could ask the court to place a constructive trust over the car, right? So very conclusory and very just like, okay, I get it, but again, not squeezing out the points. So this is what we have, right? And this is sometimes going to be that difference between a 60, a 55, et cetera, and an 80, an 85. Okay, so let's go ahead and start to wrap up. Let's talk about some takeaways that we have from today. I think Dorothy already shared a really good one on just like realizing that some of the stuff that we're sharing is not very difficult, but it is a challenge in its simplicity. It's a challenge in building that habit and something that we need to do. Yeah, Dorothy, you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, I just want to say with the simplicity is like, I don't reuse the facts like I should. Like he literally almost said the same thing verbatim with the unjust enrichment. And I just go straight to conclusory and I know better. And I don't know if it's nerves, but like you always said, like, it's okay to use the facts over and over again. And I still don't do that. And I don't know why I get away from that. And so I've just seen you do that, and using the facts and never mention the name of Bob. Like I left a whole name out, I said, it, but I left the name out. So like the little simple things. And I think it really is slowing down.
And then also too, remember this, like You know, I really focus on the pre-writing phase, everybody, in that first 15 minutes, where that's where I'm putting in like all of my brain power, all of my thought to like really get what's going on, really issue spot the correct issues because it's important. But then, Dorothy, hopefully, what you could see there as I was doing that, how robotic I was. Right. Like there wasn't a lot of brain power to your point. It was just like, I'm looking at my rule, I'm grabbing the part of the rule that I need to focus on, and then I'm simply going to the facts and just bringing that over. So I'm really just in like matchmaking mode more than anything else. So once you start to realize that, not even to realize that, once you start to consistently execute that and let go of, like you said, that like that internal just kind of discomfort with reusing the same facts, or that internal discomfort that some of us have of like, we need to like creatively write. We need to write in a way where we're sounding unique, where no, this is really like, are you sounding like what's on the cut sheet, which is those facts, bringing over and making those simple arguments. So yes, awesome, awesome, awesome. Let's go with one more before we head out. I'm curious. Let's go back to Jenny from the beginning. Jenny, what is your takeaway that you're learning from this essay workshop?
For
Oh,
me, like I said, my issue is prioritizing like the learning which one needs more time. And I think that's where I struggled with, where I'm like, I want to write down everything and I run out of time to do like a complete analysis on the issues that matter.
yes. So, yep. And that again, that could be the sole reason why we don't get it is just that trying to talk about everything and not prioritizing the issues. So good. Okay, so before we get out, yeah, Dorothy asks, can we get the grade? So I just privately messaged the person that provided me the score. So I'm gonna wait for her, that person to send me that, and then we have a few other questions. Okay, so I just got it. It was a 55. So let me go back over this one more time and kind of just give my thoughts on why it was a 55. All right. So again, I think we had maybe a little bit too long of a discussion here. All right. We had expectation damages. Okay. So I think that expectation damages discussion, if we're going to do it the way we talked about it, is going to be more aligned with the fact that expectation damages is not an ideal remedy because under the facts, they received what they expected from the contract. So that wasn't really the best remedy. Right. And then consequential damages, therefore, didn't necessarily really need to be talked about. Specific performance was, again, I think a big non-issue that a lot of us discussed. Replevin was good. I think we could have mentioned in short, equitable lien, but the constructive trust was good. And then rescission. So I think there was a bit of issue spotting, right? And then how long is this? Here's another thing. Okay, so we barely got over that mark. Remember, I want on average 1,500 words per essay from you guys. Sometimes it's more, but on average 1,500. I've seen a fair amount that were right around this 1,000 mark and under that were almost routinely in the 50 range as a score. So remember, we got to get enough down on the page to get those points as well. Let's take a quick look at the issue spotting thing that we did as well to see what else wasn't on there. So yeah, we didn't have injunction. Oh, and then the tort damages. So far, I haven't seen tort damages on any of the ones that have been submitted to me from previous students. However, I don't think I've seen too many where people got above a 55 on the remedies essay. So I do think this was worth some points. I'm waiting to either see somebody who scored well or didn't and discuss this. And obviously, we'll be getting the bar provided answers in a couple of months or so. All right, so let me go to a few of the last questions that we have, and then I'll let you guys go. So let me go to Jose.
Hey D, how are you?
Hey, good. Oh, I'm sorry too. My screen wasn't showing that. I'm good, brother. How about yourself?
I've been better. I'm
Yeah.
still trying to work this thing out, but I've been better. Hey, wanted to ask you, I think you already went into it, when those answers are going to be published by the bar.
They usually take about a month and a half, 2 months, right? So we're in the February exam. It's always in the middle of bar prep. So I would start checking honestly from like mid-December and I would expect it to be in there by mid-January, but anywhere in that
Okay.
range. Yeah, they don't give
Yeah.
they don't give an exact date, unfortunately. So you got to just kind of check until they put it up.
All right. I'll just keep that on a bookmark and check it out. But
There we go. Yeah.
looking forward to get back into the groove, man.
There we go. That's the mentality. You got to get back on the saddle, back on the horse, and get after
Yeah.
it. So good. Awesome.
All right.
All right, let me go to Natalie next.
Yeah, I just have a question about because I was looking at your guys' bar prep plus and how you guys had the essay workshops. Will they kind of work like this, or will they be more like
Yeah.
one-on-one, or because I know for me,
Yeah.
I'm like I definitely like the one-on-one treatment, but if it's I guess it would be more like this.
Yeah, so great. I actually wanted to model this one a little bit more after our essay workshop. So for those that are interested in the Bar Prep Plus program, you can get an idea of what to expect. So the idea is that, Natalie, like in the beginning, they will closely resemble this as we're really focusing on introducing the strategy, introducing the skills that I want you all to adopt. And then at some point, right, we kind of lean off of so much of the reminder, and it's just more of a focus on more content and more like in depth on the essay. But in reality, the essay workshops we do are, if we're working on contracts, we take a contracts essay, we go through the pre-writing phase together, we talk through it. I provide my thoughts, my recommendations at different points. I take questions, and we go through the essay. So yes, this is very similar to what one will look like. But in Bar Prep Plus, we also do multiple choice workshops, which will look a little bit like what we did on last week. But again, after the first couple of sessions of really ingraining the system, we're actually flying through more questions.
Okay, no, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's definitely something to experiment with and know yourself, right? Because you were mentioning like I like the idea of one-on-one. So yeah, some people find that the group setting is adequate and preferred and sufficient because they get the like camaraderie of the other group. We had a awesome volunteer to show their essay. We could see what other students are doing, where they're at. We can learn from each other, right? Whereas others might benefit directly from one-on-one. So we give the option of both. But yes, that is how the Bar Prep Plus with the group workshops would look. Awesome. All right, Aaron, got our last question for the night.
Yeah, hey, I don't know if it's a question, just so I signed up for the tutoring, right? The one-on-one. Just wanted to like maybe we could talk about that later on a private session, but just wanted to say I signed up for that one.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Is that like, yeah, if there's any like, we'll get you set up, and if we have any kind of thoughts on it, or questions on it, we'll definitely get that handled. But yeah, sounds good. Glad to hear that we got that going, and yeah, we got our plan, and we're gonna start executing on it. I know I was talking to Monique earlier, and so yeah, we'll be in touch as far as like, because I know we talked about possibly starting this week, so
Yeah.
we'll be in touch for those next steps.
All right, cool. Thank you, D.
All right, sounds good. And then I just got a message from another student. If you want to stick around for a second. All right, Dorothy, I'm glad to hear it was helpful. Keep your head up. We got this. It's time to put, Dorothy, all you have to do is follow it. Incredibly intelligent, smart. Just follow these steps, build these habits. Okay. I'm going to share screen, everybody. So we have a 60. This was graded as a 60. Is this for the right essay? This ain't the right essay. Person who sent me this. It's supposed to be for essay number 5. Hold on, let's see if it comes in. So, so is the 60 for essay number 5, or was that 60 for essay number 1? Okay, so the 60 was for essay number 5. Okay, so now we have it up. Let's see. All right, there's so many tabs. Chat. It was AFQ 0099 or 954. Yep, this is the one. Wait, no. That's
business.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on. Let me see if let me double click it again. Okay. All right. Now I have it. Share screen. Okay. So damages, payer can recover, suffer actual punitive. Okay, so we have a 60, and this is the first that we are seeing actual tort damages on there. It's giving us definitely that indicator that tort damages were worth a discussion. All right, so we have our rule there. Okay, so what we're seeing here is, right, as good as this was with this intro statement, right? We clearly love an intro statement, but we do like actual damages as a heading, and then another heading and discussion for punitive damages as well. All right, Jaguars baseball, Sluggers baseball. So we see some different organization here. Okay, so then you have punitive damages down here. So interesting. I want to come back up, but we have okay, so this is just a very long actual damages discussion. I don't think actual damages would have been that long, but let's see then what that took away from. So we had nominal, pure economic, I don't think was worth any time. Limitations on damages, cool. Equitable remedies, TRO and preliminary, that was good. Okay. Legal restitution, good. All right. Right. I tell you guys, this was a legally fit student. So we're definitely seeing the folder system, like right in that order. Like it. Constructive trust. Equitable lien. So yeah, 1870 words. So yeah, I think this was actually overall a really good essay. I would have, from a just skim through, I would have given this more of a 65. I think as far as maybe some of the issues we could have discussed, the only thing I'm looking on the other side, okay, we missed replevin as a potential discussion. We missed rescission. Rescission was a big one. So there's no heading for rescission. And we're also missing a heading for oh no, we did the restitution damages right here. You did it under towards set of contracts. Is likely, okay, legal damages. But this is just really a rule. So you actually didn't really have a discussion. Okay, so I could see why here it was more on the 60, a few missed things. But overall, this is pretty good. I think hence the pretty good score of a 60. So that gives us something just to compare to everybody. And again, look at, the word count, 1870. All right, we're going on the 2-hour mark. I'm going to go ahead and excuse you all. If you haven't already, if you want to, you can book a repeater assessment and strategy where we can go through your work product in detail of your remedies essay number 5, talk about what you can work on. And then also we can talk about the legally fit options. If anybody is on the fence and interested in signing up, we can come up with an attack plan and figure out what's best for you. Okay, so everybody have a great night. This was awesome. We'll be in touch if there's any upcoming events, but for now, I think we're gonna call the events here, but sometimes we might surprise you all and say, you know what, we got some energy for another essay or something like that. So stay tuned in your email. And again, we hope you all choose Legally Fit for your bar prep. All right, everybody, talk soon.
Thanks, DeAndre.
You're welcome.